Okay.
You can send Lisa whatever you want to send her. But yeah, when you start, just press record and then send it to Lisa after you look at it.
Sounds good.
You control your content.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining this session. Um, Oscar has placed the Bitly link for the presentation in the chat. It will bring you to a wakelet. It is set up linear, so you would scroll to get to the content. While we're waiting for others to come in and get settled, there is a Google Doc form. These are clickable, so you could go ahead and click on that and complete the form. Is this session on there? Yep, it's at the bottom. Okay, good. I always forget to like update my form. And then there's also a Wakelet check-in. So I always love to know who's in this space. What's filling your bucket? What's draining your bucket? Hey, Scott. I didn't see you there. All right, let's go ahead. It's been 5 minutes. So again, if you're just now joining us, the Bitly link, Oscar has placed it in the chat. It will bring you to a Wakelet. And the way that the Wakelet works, I've set it up so that way it's linear, and you would just go ahead and scroll. And so just to start us off, there is a welcome Google form that's there. These are clickable. So if you would go ahead and click on that, fill out the information, it's very quick. And then there's a Wakelet check-in. And I love to do this, one, to find out who's in this space. And then secondly, to find out what's draining your bucket and what's filling your bucket, or what's draining your bucket and what's filling your bucket. And you don't need an account to have this. So it will ask you to go ahead and put your name, and then the directions are here on how to add your content. So while you're completing that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Leticia Citizen. I'm still like trying to come down from the keynote. Like as soon as I finished, I had to turn off my camera, and the tears just started flowing, and my husband just kind of held on to me. It was a lot. So I was like still trying to process that, and finally started eating a bagel sandwich. But I'm like, oh, I can just go into my session and we can just have fun with this. Not the same type of nerves, which I love. So, oh no, why is it saying something's wrong? So this is my 21st year as an educator, my third year out of the classroom. I'm an I4 coach at Hawthorne School in Beverly Hills Unified School District. And Lisa's in here. and we have a great story to tell. So we work together. She's at our other K-5 school. So in Beverly Hills Unified, there are two K-5s, one standalone middle school and then one high school. And actually, I was presenting for ISTE in Chicago 3 years ago. Gotta have to remember, right? Like time is kind of wonky. And I was presenting at the Bunsey booth, and Lisa's walking by, and she overhears me say that I'm a nomad, because at that time I was transitioning out of Arcadia Unified School District and looking for a new job. And so I'm like presenting here in this booth, and Lisa's like watching, and at the same time, my phone is in my back pocket and it's blowing up, and I'm like, what the hell is going on, kind of thing, right? And so then when we finish, you know, she comes up to me and I take my phone out, and it's her. She's like in my DM saying like, hey, we've got a position at Beverly Hills, you need to come, you know. So then we start chatting. So God works in mysterious ways, and that, yeah, Lisa and I connected. I interviewed like that following week, and then was offered the job. So I've been an I4 coach for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I spent 16 years in Pasadena Unified and 2 years in Arcadia. And also on the side kind of thing, because equity and inclusion is near and dear to my heart, and in tandem with using tech ed tools, right, to really enhance our teaching and students' learning. I co-founded Equity in Action California with 5 other great, amazing people. And then we also started a business in August. Who does that in pandemic? So we got an LLC, kind of doing some things. So that's been interesting. That's been working, and I've been loving it and being patient and just being observant in all this. And then, yes, I am an ambassador and a trader for several edtech platforms. And I always point out that I am, because of one, these platforms do a great job of really allowing our voices as students and teachers to really come through. And then 2, they are really about listening to student and teacher feedback and how that enhanced our tools. So definitely check those out. So we are here. It's like me in a nutshell kind of thing. So we're here to talk about how I use slides and Google Drawings to create, reflect, and then allow students to have real-time feedback. And I just want to point out that that feedback is not always from me. We don't have time for it, right? But I want to make sure that my students understand that who they're creating for and their real audience goes far beyond the teacher, and that they have each other. And then on top of that, they've got global peers that we can connect with. And so we're gonna move through this. I've got a couple examples that I wanna, you know, share with you. And then if you have questions at any time, unmute yourselves, you've got the chat. And then I wanna give you time to like really look at these things and play around with it. And so again, each one is clickable. So the first one that I loved using Google Slides and Google Drawings was for the best week ever. So when I was in the classroom, every Monday morning, we called it our Reflection Monday. And for that Reflection Monday, what my students were gonna do is I used Seesaw with my 5th graders. And what they did was we would come in Monday morning, and they were like used to it. They knew they were going to do 2 different kinds of reflections. The first one was the best week ever. So they each had Twitter names, fake ones. And we even had a wall in the classroom where they like took pictures and put their handles, because that's where they were going to also share their tweets. And that was like exit tickets, right? Or entry tickets that we could use that space. But then using Google Drawings, students were going to reflect on the previous week, and they were going to write a tweet. And so I know that characters are now 280. I kept it at 140 because I wanted them to be concise and to really be intentional and purposeful about reflecting on the previous week. And so I would set up the slide deck. So there are some examples here that you can click on. So the slide deck typically reflected something that we did the previous week. So I would set it up. And what students would do is then go into Google Drawings, and they were not allowed to upload any images. They had to use the shapes and the lines that were there. It's nice to see the progression when they first start to like mid-year, when they really start to become masters at how to do it. But they would have to write a tweet and they would have to include the hashtag best week ever. So that was part of their character count. But they would write about why the previous week was the best week ever. And again, it was just a time to reflect. And then they're drawing their pictures using Google Drawings. They learned how to download them. And then they would bring it over to our collaborative Google Slide. So this is a great opportunity to talk about digital citizenship, right? How like they're going to each take their own slide. They knew, and there are people who will set it up so that way every student has a number, and then they only click on, you know, that slide for that number. But I let them figure it out. I would just tell them, you can do that, you can handle this, figure out how you're going to do it. And most times they're just like, they would, you know, instantly hurry up and go to a slide and hurry up and type their name. And I just told them whatever works for you. But again, it was go ahead and reflect. Most of them kept a document where they would type out their tweets there and then use the word count tool, right? To like check to make sure that they had 140 characters. But they were just gonna go ahead and it was just a quick check-in. So that was the first part of the reflection. And the second part of the reflection is then they would, to use Seesaw, they would go ahead and think about 3 creations that they were, where it doesn't matter what stage they were in. So if they were in the beginning stage, in the ending stage, in the middle, but they were going to reflect on 3 things they did the week before, and they were going to upload it into Seesaw. And then they were going to do a quick reflection as they uploaded that. And what happened is that was a great way for us to connect with parents. And so my parents, I would explain that to them at back to school night, where I would tell them, you know, we're going to work on purposeful feedback. And I actually do include that here at the bottom, where we were doing purposeful feedback. And so I would teach that to the parents as well. Students would also respond to each other. They were going to give each other a compliment, and it had to be very specific. So I couldn't just say, this is cool. They would say, you know, your word usage helped me, you know, create an image in my head, whatever that is. Then the second part was they were going to make a personal connection. And then the last part, they were going to ask a question about the creation, but it couldn't be answered by what they just saw. And so that was the important part, because then the authors were going to go back and look at the feedback and then respond to them. And so now we've got this dialogue going back and forth, but also with the parents, again, like that reflection part on Monday morning where they were sharing things, the parents would also look at it. And so then at the end of the day, I would then share this slide deck with our parents, and then they would also go ahead and take a look at and I would also house it on our school, on my classroom website, so that way parents can access and see about why it was the best week ever the week before. So we did this every week on Monday mornings. And if we didn't have school on that Monday, then we just did it on Tuesday. So that's the first example that's there. Go back. So then the next one is using Google Slides for QR code buddies, right? And so again, the directions are here on how we did this. So part of something that we did in class, right? You can use QR codes for whatever. Even now, like Flipgrid has QR codes. The students had the extension there and they just knew how to make them right away. So some of these are examples of like their name poem that they would connect that QR code to a Google Doc. But they would always go back to Google Drawings. So here's an example where one of my students, Hannah, the picture that she drew on Google Drawings was to reflect what this QR code led to. And so you can actually like click on them and see them. But it was usually, you know, their name poems or maybe their biographies that they wrote. But again, just really using those Google Drawings. Sometimes we would share it on a slide deck. Here's some other ones that you can take a look at, but just bringing those QR codes in and then creating that image. A lot of times we would print these out and place them around school, so that way other students around our school could also take a look at them and access them, and, you know, share feedback if they wanted to use. A lot of students would stop by our class and say like, oh, I wanted to meet so-and-so because, you know, they did a great story. So that was just another way of us using that. To get rid of all these tabs. The third example is wonder poems. So if you are not familiar with Wonderopolis, I'm going to put it in the chat, wonderopolis.org. It is a free site. It is all about nonfiction text. And there's a wonder every day. And what's nice is that you can access the wonders from previous times. You can search by topic. So let's say we're doing water, and sometimes we would do Wonder Wednesdays in my class. So sometimes I would say, all right, today's topic is water. Go ahead and type in water, and then like choose 2 articles and do a comparative analysis. I just want to point out that for each article, like it just gives them like surface level information. So this was not meant to be like an end all be all. It was really a way to spark students' curiosity and then hopefully leap into like next steps and get them to do further research. But on this article, you have the topic or the main question, the wonder of the day. You've got 3 supporting questions. There's typically a video and then some like images that are there that you can have students analyze. What's nice is that the words in yellow, if you hover over them, they give you the definition. Let's see, there's like a little word challenge that they can take, and then there's like a test your knowledge. But the other thing is for our students who are still acquiring language and still working on their reading skills, there's an immersive reader that's here. And if you are not familiar with immersive reader, here we go. Oh, well, what's going on? So lately, they've been having issues. However, let's see. So Immersive Reader is actually on Wakelet as well. There are several websites now that Immersive Reader is partnering with. So like Buncee, Wakelet, I think it's also like in Microsoft products. So it should work. Here we go. So what Immersive Reader does. So imagine this is on using the Wonderopolis articles, right? So what it does is it captures all the text that's there, and it will read
the speaker
it to
Letitia
students.
Citizen.
You can, as the reader, as the one who's controlling this, you can control the voice speed. You've got 2 selections between 2 different types of voices. And then here's the other like amazing parts that are here in Immersive Reader. So the first one is you can do text preference. So you can change the text size. You can increase spacing or not. You've got 3 choices of font. And from my understanding, there are more fonts that are coming soon. You can click on to change the color. And then you can do syllables. You can also, if you're working on parts of speech, students can control colors, and then that way they can see the nouns. You can show labels, so that way it's available above. And then some of these, if you click on certain words, there's, here we go, school. Then they also have like a dictionary, Pictionary, and that's here for the students. And then the last part is then you can also chunk the sentences, so you can do line preference. Sometimes you can chunk them by 3. It just depends on how the article knows how much is there. And then the other thing is changing it to a different language. So you click on entire document. Come on, I'm gonna do it. Let's choose another language. Usually it works. There it goes. So it will like change the language for you. Sometimes it will play the language and it will let you know if read aloud is not there. This is a great tool as well. If you're using like Wonderopolis, I have my students share with their parents what we're studying, but definitely check out Wonderopolis. So then what we do in class is we create wonder poems. So during April, when it's National Poetry Month, students go ahead and we'll do different topics. Sometimes on Wonder Wednesday, they get to choose their own topics. We actually would have a wonder wall in the classroom. I've also helped my teachers create them virtually using Jamboard, where they split the board in half and students take one half of that board. And And then they're like typing out all their questions that they have, and then they're using Wonderopolis to see if they can help answer those questions. And so out of that, then we're using poetry. Sometimes I'll say like read the article and then write on this particular type of poem. And so in April, we would do one poem a day, one wonder poem a day. And again, they're going into Google Drawings, they're creating their images, and then they're bringing them over to our collaborative slide deck. So everyone is an editor on that slide deck. Again, great opportunity to talk about digital citizenship. And then we'll share this slide deck out with classrooms that we're collaborating with. So when I did teach fifth grade, we actually mystery Skyped with at least one class in every state. And that was awesome because we would play mystery Skype. We would try to figure out where each person was where each school was located. And then afterwards, they got to ask open-ended questions. And at the end, the crucial part was I would ask the teacher, hey, now our students have a wider audience. Going forward, can we like share links to their projects? Which was beautiful in the sense that once my students understood that they were going to get feedback from someone else who wasn't just the teacher, then when it was time to create, my students would come up and say, okay, Ms. Citizen, who's my audience today? And I would ask them, who do you want your audience to be? And so they could say, oh, maybe that second grade class that was in Ohio, or that ninth grade class that was in Texas. And out of that, from that conversation, we would then talk about, okay, if you're writing for second graders, what does that mean for you as the creator, as the author? What things do you need to put in place so that way you can make sure that that second grader gets the point of what you're trying to share with him? And so we would have those conversations and then sharing these links to our Wonder Poems, so that way those students would give them feedback by using the comment section on the side. Sometimes teacher would just have them to share their feedback like on a Padlet or on a slide or something like, or on the doc. But again, it was getting that real-time feedback from their global peers, and then being able to adjust what they needed to based off of what they received. So that's one example. Let's go back here. So then the next example that I have here is our state podcast. So part of an extension activity, I told you we would mystery Skype with at least one school in every state. But out of that, students were then going to create state podcasts, and they could only use the information that they received from those collaborations that we did with those classrooms. And so again, I like have the information that's there. They had choice in which platform they wanted to use to create their podcast. Most of my students chose the Nimbus Chrome extension because they found it was really easy to set up their slide decks and then put that into Nimbus and then record their voice and add music and add sound and everything. So then a part of that was, in order to share with others, my students would then turn that podcast into a QR code that you could scan, and then they would create the image that would reflect the state that they were talking about using Google Drawings. This was really awesome too, because we would share it with parents, and then we would set up a Padlet where parents could go ahead and put their feedback there about what information they learned from that podcast. So here, I'll even, let's see, I think I can bring one up. That way you could listen to it. My internet's like, okay, so here's one example. Let's see if it plays.
Hello, my name is Stephanie, and I will be introducing the state of Florida. Welcome to the Sunshine State of Florida. The beautiful state of Florida was founded by Juan Ponce de Leon. He named this region Florida because it was during the Eastern time when Florida had florid vegetation. Juan Ponce de Leon, the explorer, was born in the country of Spain, in Santo Tomás de Campos. You can attend exciting events here in Florida, such as the Citrus Festival. Who doesn't love the craveable scent of citrus fruits? Enjoy your time at plenty of amusement parks, such as Disney World, Disney Cruise, and SeaWorld. Whoa, alligators! Watch the interesting alligators at Everglades National Park.
So you get the idea. But like again, just creating this space using Google Drawings to then set this up. We would also put them on a slide deck again so that we could share it out, and then printing them and putting them around school so that way others can access them and receive feedback again. Another example of how I use Google Drawings is to set up my lesson plans. And I actually found this idea online, and then I kind of like changed it up to fit like my needs. But what I would do is essentially like the sub that would come in was just there to facilitate. So I would create this doc using the boxes and everything and type in. I would share this doc with the sub, and then I would also share this on Seesaw with my students. So each of them, it would have them to force copy. So each of them got their own copy, and then they knew where to share their document with me as soon as they made their copy. So that way, wherever I was, let's say I was at a conference or a PD, or maybe I was sick at home, then I could go into that space onto my folder, click on it, and then watch them like as they're doing their work. So you'll notice that like right here, they were doing their pen pal project. And then underneath, they had to tell me who did they chat with. So I had certain questions, accountability questions that they had to go ahead and fill in the boxes. I always started off with like a daily check-in to, let me know like, how are you feeling? Or they did like the hawk walk. So how was it? Like we always want to check in with our students, right? Like even if I'm not there, hey, I want to know, because there were times where students would share like they weren't in a great space. And so a lot of times I would step out from whatever meeting I'm in, or like I said, if I was even sick, and I would call my classroom and say like, hey, can I talk to Scott? And Scott would come to the phone and I'm like, hey, I just want to check in, dude. Like I read, your response is there anything I can do for you? And, a lot of times they're like, oh, can I talk to you about it at recess time or something like that? Or they might say like, hey, I'm okay. I just wanted you to know. But that was a great way for me to still see. And I found that this was a lot more effective one, because then I knew that my students were going to do what I need to do. How many times have we like created lesson plans, sub lesson plans, and like the sub made their own decision about like not completing what was there, or they didn't get through what was going on. So this was just a great way for me to see all of that. And then at the end, I always had a daily checkup. So just what's nice is that you can resize the Google Drawing platform to fit your needs, add the images and type up the text, and then every student gets one, and they're gonna go ahead and respond in there. I'm gonna like do a checkpoint right here. Does anyone have any questions so far? I know, Scott, you've been sharing some things in the chat about what you do.
So my question, Letitia, is how do you manage when all your students turn in these great creative projects? How do you manage to give them all personalized feedback?
So one, I'm not like I told them, I'm not always the one who's going to give them all of the feedback, but I am looking at all of them. So as they're creating, if we are sharing, like I said, I use Seesaw with my students. I know there's people would use like Google Classroom, or whatever that you use that works for you. While students are working, I'm like facilitating, I'm walking around or like on virtual space, right? I give them that time, and as they're creating, I'm like checking in with them, and I can see them in real time what they're doing. So I can go up, like I can come to you, Scott, and be like, hey, so I see that you're doing X, Y, and Z. Like we can have that conversation right then and there. And especially like with this Google Doc, right? All the links are here, so I can like click on those and go in and see them in real time. But I'm doing it while they're working and answering questions. Otherwise, there are certain things that I'll say like, hey, this one I am going to check out. I'll just have like a checklist, like using Google Sheets, where I'm like keeping up with things, and then I'll write directly on here, you know, using Mote, so that way it records my voice. If I'm using Cami, using my voice there, sometimes making a video for them. But I try to make time to always like do it in that real time that they're doing it, whether face to face or verbally to them, or even just write on the document, but I'm doing it while they're doing it. If that makes sense. Oh, thank you, Megan. Anyone else? But I would definitely say like find what works for you. And the other thing too is I know we know which students are gonna struggle a little bit, that need a little more conversation with you. So I know to like look at them first, right? To go to them to check back in. And I keep a list of like, okay, go back to so-and-so. Like I'm taking notes. Even now, even though I'm not in a classroom, I do teach digital citizenship. So I visit every class every 2 weeks for 45 minutes. So I even have like a little journal that I'm writing down things about like certain students to make sure when we're doing projects, I'm coming back in. Anyone else? All right, so then another example I have here is through the Mini Masterpiece project. And so this is just an example of something, again, of how I am using Google Google Slides. And so I love to use Google Slides for HyperDocs. So this is another way, again, letting students consume content, so that way I'm not standing at the forefront and lecturing all the time, but they're engaging with certain content that I want to give them, and then they're going through the process, right, of engage and explore and explain. And so setting up this Google slide, having students to each make their own copy, and then putting it in this, so then I can see it as they're working real time, and then checking in. And so they've got like different activities. And so they're just going through that process. And again, as they're working through it, because everyone's going to be at a different place, I can see what's going on and like reach out to Oscar if Oscar needs, or like I can see that like, hey, wait a minute, like he's not fully getting it, or he's missing a point, or wait a minute, he has a question. But this is another great way of just using Google Slides and using the speaker notes down here to also give them feedback, and using the comments, right? Where we can share on the side with them, and I'll like make a text box and like write on it and say like, hey, I want you to like relook at this sentence again, you're missing some key points, or whatever that is, but I can do it right there on their slide. And I do have a conversation with my students about like, I want to recognize that they are the author, they are the creator, and that I'm not just coming in and destroying their work. So I try to do it as less invasive as possible, right? So again, I'm going to use the speaker notes. I'm going to use the comment section. And I have to tell you, I learned that from my own child because my oldest daughter, she was 5 at the time, and I used to teach summer school. And so at the time she was transitioning from kinder to first, and I was teaching summer school for first graders who still needed extra bump to be ready for second grade. So I had her doing the work that we were doing. I'm like, hey, you can do this. So over there and do your work, because she had to come with me. And so at one point they were using high frequency words, and the word was hour, but she used it as R. And so she put, there are 5 apples on the table. And I was like, oh no, sweetie, this is the incorrect way. So I started writing on her paper, and she went, you wrote on my paper. And I went, oh my God. Like, and in that moment, I was like, she's absolutely right. Like, here she is, this is her creation. And I've like ruined it without asking permission first. So getting my students to understand that, yes, sometimes on your Google slide, I might make a text box because I really want you to know where it is. Or again, using that comment where you get to like highlight and then make the comment on the side, or using the slide deck, but just getting them to know that like, hey, I'm not here to destroy your creation. I'm just trying to interact with you and getting them to be comfortable with that. So please, please, please have that conversation with your students. And then the other favorite thing in our class was using Post-it. So definitely using Post-it, so I wouldn't write on their like paper or their drawings or anything like that, but they could always have that posted so I could write on. Again, using Google Slides for students to share their creations. Again, taking the slide, here's where they were writing their I am poems, but they were writing the I am poem from the perspective of someone in that primary source. So even in this case, there may not have been a visual person there, but imagine if you're a person in the space, how would you write that I am poem? And sharing this slide deck again and getting real-time feedback from their classmates. So anytime they finished sharing or adding their piece, they were required to then go through and read their classmates and then respond to at least 3 of their classmates. And that was like with everything that we did. Again, so that way it's just not always coming from me, but also from their peers. And then here's another example of a hyperdoc that you can check out. And then at the end of the school year, we were using Google Drawings to do a reflection. So we would start off with a hyperdoc that would actually walk them through their reflecting. So they got to jot down 3 or 5 of their successes. So just very simple. They each get their own copy. They're writing out their responses. And then they're going to create and share. So they're going to use Google Drawings to create a poster showcasing your results. Be creative and have fun. I really tried not to give them templates in terms of like how I wanted it to look, because I felt like that was like the creative side, right? Like letting them, however the wind blew for them to create. So you'll notice that in these reflections that I shared here, each one looks different, but they had the same content, right? They were required to include, what was it? Like their goals. They had to include their favorite things. They had to include like 3 to 5 favorite events. And so the student chose to do it this way. But each one, again, they're using Google Drawings to go ahead and create that infographic for their reflections for the school year. And I feel like that's what Google Drawings allows our students to do. That's why I would always tell them, like, no, while they can upload images really easy, I'm like, no, do your own, because I want you to be creative with it. And kid, I will honestly say, does every kid want to do it that way? No. You have those kids who just like will be like, it's just easier for me to upload a picture. And I'm like, I know. But like that in this case, that's not what I want you to do. There's a time that I'll let you do it, and then there's most of the time where I'm not. And so getting them to be comfortable with creating, like we could equate it to students when they're drawing. They want to, there's some students who right away say like, I'm not an artist. I can't draw, whatever, right? But like helping them be comfortable to like, okay, let's just try it. Try it this way and walk in. What's nice about Google Drawings is I can partner them with someone else and say, hey, work together, or I'll demonstrate for them and just say like, let's try this today. Let's do it this way. And my hope is always to get them comfortable. And like I said, typically by mid-year, all of them are all about like, yo, look, this is how I can do it. And they're really excited about using Google Drawings and really creating from scratch. I have included the purposeful feedback protocol that I use. I do have this one like as our general one. I do have another one for when we're doing like writing and I want them to like do editing. So they always start with a compliment. The second part is to make a suggestion, and we talk about how a suggestion is something that like is not required for you to change it, but it's just like, hey, this might like enhance the imagery that you're trying to set. And then the third one is the edits, like these need to be changed. Oh yeah, you missed an end mark, you misspelled X, Y, and Z. So I do have that type of protocol, and we use that periodically as we're going through, especially like the podcast. We'll stop midway through them creating and saying, okay, who's ready to show theirs, even if it's not all the way done, but let's go ahead and get some feedback. And students are writing on Post-its about like, here's the compliment. Yeah, you hit it when you did this. Here's a suggestion and here's an edit. But then for the final part, we're just focusing on complimenting, connecting, and then asking a further question. All right, so I see study encourage students to fill the entire space. Yes, Brittany, that is something that happens over time. In the first, like I said, in the beginning, you know, it's almost like you have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. I would have like 1/3 of my students who like they're gung ho about and they're like, yes, and they fill the whole space. And then I have like the 1/3 in the middle that kind of like, okay, today I'll do it, but tomorrow I'm not. And then I have the other third that are like, yo, this is not for me. I just really want to upload. And so there's times where I partner them up. So you'll notice like with the poems, they'll work together and they'll work on that same one. And so they're learning from each other. But it's definitely over time that we start to talk about like we're using paintings and artwork as primary sources and other things. And so I'll point that out then. I'll say like, notice, you know, how they're using all the space that's there. And, you know, let's break it into thirds. How did they use this space? So then connecting that to what we're doing as well on Google Drawings. Let's see. I started having students provide feedback to them on Palette and found out right away I had to teach. Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Oscar. You definitely have to teach what it means to do purposeful feedback. So I actually do have a slide deck that I use with students. And we do that. Like we spend like the first 3 days, like just looking at compliments. And then we only work on connections, right? Because they all want to just say like, this was cool. This was nice.
Yeah, it's like cool or awesome or good job, and then I have to tell the kids what was good, like what was awesome.
Exactly. And so I tell them, so I just told you that this was good. What does that mean to you? And they're like, well, it was good. And I was like, well, what part? And they're like, well, you didn't tell me. And I'm like, exactly. So we go through it. We take each day, even with the one that I use with compliment suggestions and edits, we really take time to understand the difference between a suggestion and an edit, right? So I have like slides that's where I actually intentionally teach that. And that whole day we're doing it, right? Anything that we do, I'm like, all right, so you're gonna write a compliment, you know, and I even have them to give me compliments, like write me a compliment, right?
Yeah, I think it even helps the students provide feedback on their own work once they practice feedback on others, and they understand the assignment better if they provide feedback. So yeah, I mean, I kind of did it rough. I didn't do it like that organized. I mid Padlet, you could see the feedback changing to more proper feedback and longer, more descriptive.
Right. And I have to tell you, Oscar, even when that happens, use that, like, right? Like, cause I do that. I'll like the first time I have them do it, I just like, all right, so here's what you're going to include and just watch it. And so we go through and I'm like, all right, so let's read this one. And I do it anonymously too. I set up the Padlet so that way their names aren't there. And so we talk about like, well, what's missing here? Or what really stands out that helps you. So using those moments, and I agree, definitely allowing students to also self-reflect. They always have to do that. They already know. When they come to me, like, you know, you have that one kid that's like, now I have to go self-reflect, huh? And I'm like, yes, why are you here? You already know this. But getting them into that routine that they really start to see the value behind it. Because like I said, I also give them time, even when their parents give them feedback on Reflection Monday. Parents know that they have the entire day to go and reflect. And then on Tuesday morning, we take time to like go ahead and check what feedback you got from your parents. And it's funny because then I'll get kids that'll say, my mom didn't even leave me a question, Miss Citizen. How am I supposed to respond back to her? Can I call her right now? And I'm like, no, just leave your mom alone. You can talk to her later, right? Like, so they're expecting it. Or when they do it with each other, their global peers, like Miss Citizen, they didn't even follow directions. They forgot to give me a compliment. And I'm like, okay, just calm down. And you know, and saying like, you have like 5 other feedback right here. Go focus on that. It's okay. Like I'll talk to the teacher. So they're looking for it too. And so having them to do that in every activity that we do is just, it's amazing. Even when they're working collaboratively, taking time for them to do a group reflection. And I always set it up so that way they don't get to like, isolate anyone. So when they do a reflection, I'm not going to say Oscar didn't do. I say, how did you, what were your successes as a group? And what were some things that you need to work on as a group? And they understand that, like, oh, we need to practice, next time listening to each other. They don't get to point out one person.
And I kind of do feedback as selfishly because I want the kids to fix their errors instead of giving them a grade. So when it's over, everyone should get an A. So I'm done grading. So if they grade each other and improve it, then everyone's gonna get an A. So I do it for selfish reasons a little bit for that. But at the end of the day, they all improve. They provided feedback and it's more interactive. Like instead of just give me a grade and it's over.
Right. Like there are numerous times where even after all the feedback and they go back and they change it, the reflection is, tell me what changes did you make and why did you make those changes, right? Like there should always be a change. They should never be able to say, well, I didn't make any changes, then somebody lied to you. I'm gonna tell you right now, they lied. You need to go back to them and tell them they did you a disservice. So giving them that opportunity to just go ahead and talk about what changes they made and why, like whose feedback told you or gave you insight into this. And so that's why even like when we're doing podcasts and when we're creating book trailers, like we stop midway through and we're going to go ahead and do like a quick like movie day so we can watch that when we're giving you feedback. So that way, as you're still working through it and finishing up, you've got some feedback along the way to help you make some changes before you can finish it or whatever that is. Any last major questions? Also, there are some other ideas here that you can definitely check out. There's a feedback form. I love getting your feedback. So please do share. Yeah, we've got like, what, 2 minutes?
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes. So I kind of have anyone that wants to have any last questions. We're down to the end. Or you could provide Leticia some feedback right now.
Always. Yes. Give me some feedback.
I would just say thanks, Leticia. I think we all struggle with this burden of giving feedback and versus grading. And as a high school teacher, my least favorite question after "can I go to the bathroom" is, how many points is this worth?
Yes.
And so I'm sure you feel the struggle at the elementary level just as much as I do at the high school level. And it seems like, the kids get a boost when you give them good feedback. It just seems so hard to do that for 180 projects.
Right. And when I taught 5th grade in Pasadena, I had 36 students and they came every day. I love them, but they came every day. And so, yeah, I was like, how do I manage this? Right. And so letting them know, like, I'm not going to always setting that up right away. I'm not going to be the one who always gives you feedback. So having that first activity where they are giving each other. I think I was going to add, Scott, the other question, we don't necessarily get the how many points, we get how long should it be? And I'll tell them, if you want me to answer that, which I really doubt you do, you're not going to like the answer. And then they would give me the side eye and go, fine. Because I didn't want to limit them, right? However, if you feel that you can answer it in 3 sentences, all right, you better be on it. But that was the other question I hated. How long should this be?
So I just want to thank Leticia for presenting today. I know it's 11:30 and I don't know if you were able to finish everything, but I think you did, right? Good. Everyone learned a lot today. And I just want to give her a round of applause. So
cool. Thank you, Oscar. Stacy, you're welcome. Brittany, yes. I'm glad. Yeah, just start it with one activity, right? Like, and use those mistakes to like guide you. You're welcome, Sophia. Oh, I hope I pronounced this right. Sandia. Did I pronounce that right? Sandia. I think she's gone now. But thank you all for coming.
thank you. You want more applause?
No.
You didn't let me finish the video.
It didn't like go all the way through. Did
Oh,
you find it on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube. I think it's really cool because it's sort of like you're done and you're like crickets, and so it's not like you're in an auditorium and you get the crowd roaring. So they have a lot of
Sure. That's so cool. I gotta add that to my moderator list.
yeah, they have applause, crowd cheering, sound effect, and you can even use it in your class, like when a kid presents or shows something.
Yes, thank you. We always, so with the littles, like I said, I go into every class with the littles. We always do, all right, let's give them snaps and claps, right? But like half of them are doing it. Some of them are like, I can't snap, missus. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, just snap, just clap. It's great. So I'm gonna use that also. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, they're like very short clips, so um, you'll find something cool. All right,
Thank
cool.
you.
I think we have your resource on the slide deck. I think on the schedule, the Wakelet. I think Megan put it in,
Okay,
Yep, I did. We've got it.
awesome.
and I think you're done for today, right? This
Yeah.
is your only thing,
Oh
right?
my gosh, yes. But I want to go support other people, but I'm ready to pass out. Like, no, I am. You know, that's the other thing. Like, I'm such an introvert. People don't realize that, but I am. Like right now, my body's like, hello, you're done. Go to sleep. But I'm like, nope, I gotta do this. So
Go find a comfy spot to sit while you watch the others, though, right?
that's the thing, because then I'm gonna go to sleep.
Fall asleep.
But I'm already, my mind is like, you are done peopling. Please don't people anymore. But we're about to push through. This is, I know we just talked about, I just talked about in the keynote about like pushing through. This is one is worth it. So I'll do that. But thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna go find,
Yeah, and I
So
think
do-
yeah,
we just use the same links, right?
yeah, and I think when you're ready, you could probably stop the recording right now.
Oh, snap. Thank you.